Onto this story now. There's been a decline in the number of sexual offences, rapes and sexual assaults in the first quarter of the year. This is according to crime statistics released yesterday. While the numbers are down, the figures are still unsettlingly high. Let's discuss this with anti-GBV activist Rosie Motene now, who joins us now live. Rosie, thank you very much for your time here on ENCA. Now, we all know that yesterday after the minister said that it was only murder, I think 2 contact crimes saw an increase, murder being the most significant because it went up by 387 compared to the same period last year. And is there really a reason to celebrate the going down of sexual offences and rape and sexual assaults? Because to me, it looks the same. In the past 4 years, it's been within the 12,000s or the 9,000s.
Definitely, absolutely. There's no reason to celebrate at all. I mean, if you look at the World Population Review, South Africa is ranked as the highest country, is ranked as the country with the highest rate of rape. You know, in 2018, we declared it to the president. The government accepted it, that our country is in a crisis. So we're far, far, far away from celebrating anything. And to look at the stats that have been recorded regarding sexual offences, regarding rape, gender-based violence, remember, these are based on cases that have actually been opened. Now, as a counsellor and as an activist and even as a survivor, we know that getting a case opened at a police station is not that easy. And many a times they are turned away for various reasons, whether the police personnel don't have the resources to open the case, or they make up excuses such as the crime happened in another province, therefore cannot be opened now, or just when evidence is just bungled and then it never gets to court. So in terms of any celebrations, it's definitely not viable in our situation when it comes to gender-based violence in our country.
And I mean, you look at these statistics, Rosie, and you start thinking, goodness, I live in a country that is not safe at all. I mean, if we go back to the murder statistics, the minister yesterday saying that 1,327 people died in their own residence or the residence of the perpetrator. That too, if you dissect, could be part of the rape, sexual assaults, etc.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at it, and remember, these are the cases that have been reported. There's still a lot of communities where cases aren't even open. If you look at the LGBTQI community and the rate of deaths and murders against black lesbian women, the rate of rapes against black lesbian women, and they never even make it to the courts or to the dockets. And then if you also look, remember, gender-based violence is not just about physical assault, but it's also about emotional and psychological assault. So the fact that there's a large portion of the trans community who have been turned away from medical resources just because of who they are, that's another violence in itself.
And I think that was also my other concern, that maybe we should not look at the fact that when you think of rape or sexual assault, you think only of women, because there is the LGBTQI plus community that also suffers in these categories of crime.
Absolutely. And a lot of these, as I mentioned before, a lot of these crimes aren't even made to the forefront. You will see 1 or 2, and that is because if activists have managed to get media on board and so forth, or pushing a specific campaign. But you know, the marginalized communities, and especially the rural communities, where a lot of the time they don't know what their rights are. Or remember, patriarchy controls everything. Patriarchy controls, policies that have been drawn up. We know perpetrators have a lot more rights than victims and survivors, especially in the courts, and they know how to navigate themselves around that. You just look at high-profile cases where they have access to resources, that they have access to finances to intimidate victims and survivors, to keep them quiet, and remember, with intimidation and the threats, that's just another form of emotional abuse. So if you've gone through this trauma, whether it was physical or sexual, and then you go through another level of emotional and psychological, no wonder a lot of people then decide to withdraw cases. And remember, if a case has been withdrawn or if it didn't make it to the court, doesn't mean that the crime didn't happen. And people need to understand the different levels and the different ramifications of what gender-based violence is about.
I want to talk about the policing around around these type of crimes. I mean, we know that this is the entire criminal justice system. The National Prosecuting Authority is included there. But unfortunately, the police are our first point of reference when we report criminal cases. And you look at an area such as Lusigisigi in the Eastern Cape that bypassed Inanda as the rape capital. Inanda, at some point, that's what it was called in the media, because it was always leading with the statistics for rape. Now Lusigisigi going from 44 during the first 3 months of 2020 to 84 during the first 3 months of this year. But like you're saying, there's also how victims feel like they'll be re-victimized when they go to these police stations, or in areas like rural areas, you find people saying that, look, the police officer said I must just talk it out with this guy's family.
Yeah. And I mean, when I speak from my experience from the police station, obviously it's personal, but also with clients that I've taken through my counseling and so forth. And for example, I mean, we had a client before when we went into a police station. This was in an urban city. Went in at 11 o'clock in the morning. We only walked out of there at 4 o'clock, and then the person was still called back for secondary questioning. And the reason for that delay was that at first the police were reluctant to open the case. And the reason behind their reasoning was that, well, there wasn't an exact location where it took place. We had evidence and so forth. So they basically said, well, we don't want to be going around and looking for the various locations. In other words, they didn't want to do the additional work. So there's those type of cases. Then you have cases where it happened with me personally and other people where the crime took place in another province, and then they said to me, well, I can't open the case. I need to go back to that province to open the case, which is nonsense, because you can open it wherever you are in South Africa, and there's also no time limit to opening it. And also they don't have the right to question you why you're opening the case now. You know, if the crime happened in Cape Town and you're in Johannesburg, you have every right to have that case then opened, and then they transfer their docket to the necessary police station. What we found as activists and survivors, we've had to find different loopholes to ensuring that justice is served. So for victims and survivors, unfortunately, if you do go through trauma and you do need to have to open up a police docket, go with somebody, go with a counselor, go with a legal representative, so that at least they know what their rights are. And don't back down. You know, unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of campaigns where people have rehashed and regurgitated a lot of what activists have been saying for many, many years, which is great in itself. But a lot of the time is that our government and our officials and just broader society hide behind these campaigns, but no actual action has been actually really taken on the ground.
Well, Rosie, thank you so much for your time. I mean, we could talk for a long time if we had to speak about the safety of women and the LGBTQI+ and children community in South Africa. That is, of course, Rosie Motene, the Queer African Media Proprietor. Now,